The doorbell rang at exactly 8:17 on the morning of my 75th birthday. I wasn't expecting anyone, but a little part of me hoped it might be family. I smoothed down my cardigan and walked to the door, heart beating faster than I'd like to admit. On the porch stood a teenage delivery boy with a small bouquet of roses that looked tired and droopy. The petals were curling brown at the edges, like they'd been sitting around too long. "Delivery for Eleanor Jenkins," he mumbled, shoving the flowers into my hands without looking at me. Before I could even thank him, he was halfway down the path, clearly relieved to be done with the job. Inside, I searched for a card and finally found a tiny envelope tucked between the wilting blooms. The stiff, sharp handwriting told me immediately it was from my daughter-in-law Patricia. It read, "Happy birthday, Mom. Love, Andrew, Patricia, and the kids." 5 words, no exclamation point. Not even a real note from my son. I set the roses down on the kitchen table beside the little cake I'd bought myself yesterday. Years alive, 48 of them spent married to Richard, 9 of them spent missing him as his widow, and this was what my birthday had come to: fading flowers and an empty house. Just then, my phone buzzed. It was a video call from Andrew. His face filled the screen, smiling wide with that polished, too-perfect grin he used on clients. "Happy birthday, Mom," he boomed, cheerful but hollow. Patricia leaned into the frame, her hair freshly highlighted, designer sunglasses perched on her head like a crown. "Thank you, dear," I said, looking past them. The background seemed odd for their home. "How are things at the house?" "Oh, busy as always," Patricia chimed in. "The kids are at school, and we're just." A waiter in a crisp white shirt appeared behind them, speaking quick French as he set down 2 tiny espresso cups. "Voilà, monsieur, madame." Andrew froze, then quickly covered. Thanks. "We ordered coffee delivery. New neighborhood service." He angled the phone awkwardly, trying to hide what was clearly a European cafe. "How convenient," I said evenly, though my chest tightened. And then I saw it through the window, the Eiffel Tower itself, plain as day. I asked, my voice calm but sharp, "Is the Eiffel Tower a new addition to your backyard? Or maybe a trip you forgot to mention?" The screen went black. Call ended. Accident, on purpose. It didn't matter. The truth was clear: they were in Paris on my birthday, lying to me. I sat down, opened the laptop Andrew always insisted I was too clumsy to use. In just a few clicks, my bank account told me everything I needed to know. Huge withdrawals stared back at me. $12,000 2 weeks ago, $5,000 last week, and more before that. Airline tickets, fancy hotels, gourmet restaurants. My money, funding their trip. My retirement savings, drained bit by bit, hidden under investment transfers and maintenance costs. My stomach turned. My only child, the boy I had, rocked through fevers. The young man I had cheered through law school after his father died, had been stealing from me. Not just money, he'd stolen my trust, my safety, the belief that family meant something. A text pinged on my phone. "Sorry, Mom, bad connection." Call dropped. "Have a great birthday. We'll celebrate when we're back from our business trip next week." Business trip, the lie went on. I placed the phone face down, stood, and walked into Richard's study. I had kept it exactly the same all these years: the heavy oak desk, the shelves lined with leather-bound law books, the portrait of us on our 40th anniversary, smiling with love and pride. "They think I'm a fool, Richard," I whispered into the stillness. "Our son thinks I'm just some weak old woman who won't notice she's being robbed." My hand brushed along the row of books, pausing at the complete set of Justice Holmes's opinions. Behind them, right where Richard had told me, was the little key he'd given me before he passed. "When you turn 75, Ellie," he had said, with eyes still sharp despite his failing body, "you'll know what to do. Not a day before. Promise me." I had said that without really understanding why the exact age mattered. Now, feeling the cold hurt of my son's betrayal, I suddenly knew it was time. I opened the little wall safe behind Richard's portrait and found an envelope with my name in his handwriting, a flash drive, and a business card for a man named Victor Harmon, a retired federal prosecutor. My phone chimed with a social post from Patricia, a photo of our family: Andrew, Patricia, my teenage grandchildren, and even Patricia's mother, all laughing and raising champagne glasses on a sunny river cruise. The caption bragged about finally taking their long-dreamed European trip for my 75th birthday. As I broke the seal on Richard's letter, a sandwich I'd forgotten on the kitchen counter went cold while I read. He had planned this all along, He thought everyone would see me as a helpless old woman. They were very wrong. My hands shook as I read his familiar handwriting and almost smelled his sandalwood aftershave. He began, "My dearest Eleanor, if you're reading this, you're 75 and I've been gone a while. I hope these years treated you kindly, but I'm worried about Andrew." I sank into his leather chair, heart racing. He wrote that Andrew was smart but weak, easily tempted by money and status, and Patricia made it worse. He had quietly set up protections I couldn't know about, so Andrew would keep thinking he had control. The accounts Andrew'd been using held only a small part of our true wealth. The books Andrew called worthless were insured for $4, $3 million. A small property we bought under my mother's name was worth about $2 million. Victor had been managing investments worth roughly $8 million. None of this showed up in the will Andrew believed was final, and he couldn't reach this money. Richard instructed Victor to tell me only when I turned 75 a day he guessed would reveal Andrew's true colors. If Andrew had been draining what he thought was the whole estate, Richard wanted me to find out now. Tears ran down my face, not from sadness but from the shock of being right about him and from a strange relief that Richard had seen it coming. He told me to contact Victor right away. The man had the paperwork to cut off Andrew's access and start legal action if needed. The flash drive had 15 years of every single transaction, organized like only Richard could. Richard said he was sorry for hiding this from me while alive, that he'd hoped Andrew would stay the caring son we raised, but if he hadn't, it was time for me to stand tall and show everyone the quiet strength I've always had. I put the letter down, my head spinning. All this time I thought I had very little and had been careful with every rupee, while Andrew and Patricia lived on vacations bought with my money. And still, a fortune had been waiting, protected by Richard's careful plan. I picked up Victor Harmon's card and read the date on Richard's letter. Victor had been managing this money for 9 years, waiting for this exact day. My phone buzzed again with another social notification. This time it was my grandson Jason, who posted a photo from the Louvre, standing beside a statue of an old woman with the caption, "Found Grandma's long-lost twin," like it was a joke. That little sting of meanness cut deeper than I expected. I had taught Jason to read, dragged him to every baseball game when his parents were too busy, helped with his college forms last year, and he thought it was funny to make me the butt of a joke, as if I were nothing but an old woman whose money was there for the taking. I dialed the number on Victor's card with shaking hands. A calm, steady voice answered on the second ring. "Eleanor Jenkins, I presume. I've been expecting your call." He sounded like someone who knew what he was doing. When I told him I'd read Richard's letter and needed help, he replied that Richard had planned everything carefully and we should meet right away. There were papers to sign, accounts to transfer into my name, and urgent things to fix. I told him I needed a forensic accountant to trace every rupee, and he said Richard had already arranged that. Back in Richard's study, I looked at the books on his shelves with new eyes. The first editions Andrew always said were junk, the ones he wanted me to sell cheaply. My laptop pinged with an email from Andrew, a smiling family photo from a fancy Paris restaurant, my grandchildren in new clothes, Patricia wearing a flashy bracelet, Andrew showing off an expensive watch, and the line, "Wish you were here, Mom." It felt fake and cruel. I smiled at the irony. They had no idea I would be present in a very different way soon. Exactly 1 hour after my call, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw a silver-haired, well-dressed man with a leather briefcase, Victor Harmon. When he set his papers on my dining table, I felt both fear and a fierce hope. He laid out account statements, deeds, investment records, real proof of Richard's protections. Victor told me Judge Jenkins had been watching small strange withdrawals years ago and began moving assets into safe places and into a trust he put under Victor's care. The evidence was clear and upsetting. The betrayal had started before Richard died. Victor said Richard had waited until my 75th birthday to reveal everything, to give Andrew a chance to prove himself. I put my hand over my mouth, feeling the betrayal like a cold weight, but also a spark of power, because now I had the proof and help to set things right. Victor gave me a small nod. "The first step is making sure you're financially safe," he said. "I've already prepared the paperwork to remove Andrew's control over your money and put everything back in your hands." I signed page after page, feeling a mix of relief and anger. Just then, my phone buzzed with a new alert from the bank. Andrew's wife, Patricia, had just spent $3,700 at a fancy boutique in Paris. I muttered, half to myself, "They have no idea what's coming." Victor agreed quietly, then pulled out another folder. Richard wanted you to know about something else, he said. Inside was paperwork about a rare book collection Richard had been secretly building for 15 years, priceless first editions, historical documents, and rare legal texts worth over $10 million. My jaw dropped. Richard hadn't just left me money. He had left me a purpose. I was named chief curator of the collection, with a board already waiting to meet me next week. Tears welled up as I realized he had found a way to protect me and honor my love of books, even after death. Then Victor's voice grew serious. Now, about Andrew, he said. We can file criminal charges, recover the money through civil court, or you can confront him directly with the evidence. My mind flashed between the greedy man Andrew had become and the sweet little boy who once held my hand in the park. I want to see his face when he realizes we know, I finally said. Victor nodded. At that moment, my phone lit up again with a photo Andrew had posted from the Eiffel Tower smiling with his family, captioned, "Family first." The words cut deep with their hypocrisy. A knock at the door pulled me back. A sharp-eyed woman stepped in, introducing herself as Diana Reeves, the forensic accountant Victor had hired. She opened her laptop and immediately started digging into my accounts. Classic signs of theft, she explained briskly. Hidden transfers, fake expenses, luxury shopping trips, golf clubs, fine dining. She glanced up at me. I don't suppose you're into $500 lunches. I smiled faintly. Not at all. Meanwhile, Victor took a call and returned with a grim but satisfied look. It's done, he said. Your accounts are frozen. Andrew can't touch another dime. Victor's voice was calm, but I could tell he was pleased. All of Andrew's pending transactions, even the big ones from the last day, have been stopped. He'll find out soon, probably, the next time they try to swipe a card in Europe. Almost on cue, my phone started ringing. Andrew's name flashed on the screen. Diana smirked. Right on time. I froze, staring at the phone. This was it, the moment I couldn't undo. If I answered, I would be admitting to myself that Andrew didn't see me as his mother anymore, only as his bank. Victor leaned closer. You don't have to pick up, he reminded me gently. The phone buzzed again and again, loud and demanding, just like Andrew. I straightened my shoulders, feeling that little spark of strength which had always said I had. 75 years had taught me a thing or two about courage, and now it was time to use it. Oh, I'll answer, I said with a small smile, but not just yet. Let him sweat for a while. After all, I'm just a confused old woman, probably too deaf to hear the phone ringing. Victor and Diana both grinned at that. I let call after call roll into voicemail 3, then 4, then 5. For the first time in years, I was the one in control. Finally, after the 6th call, I nodded to Victor. He set up his phone to record while Diana kept typing, though she looked up with an encouraging smile. I pressed the green button and put Andrew on speaker. Hello, I said, making my voice sound weak and confused, just the way Andrew expected. Mom, finally. His voice boomed with anger and panic. Something's wrong with the accounts. None of the cards are working. Oh dear, I murmured, as if puzzled. That sounds serious. It is serious, he snapped. He caught himself. I was handling some important business, and suddenly everything's frozen. Did you go to the bank? Did you talk to someone about our finances? That word. I let the silence hang before answering slowly. Well, now that you mention it, I did speak to someone today. A very kind man who had some paperwork for me to sign. What paperwork? Andrew's voice sharpened with alarm. Who was this man? He said his name was Victor. Victor Harmon. Andrew went silent. I could even hear street sounds from Paris on the line. Then he repeated flatly, Victor Harmon. And what did he say he wanted? Oh, something about a trust Richard set up, and some accounts I didn't know existed. I paused, enjoying the moment. Oh, and a collection of books worth millions. Isn't that something, Andrew? The very books you kept telling me to throw out. This time, the silence dragged on. When Andrew finally spoke, his tone had completely changed, smooth, gentle, coaxing. The same voice he'd used before, when he wanted me to sign papers without reading them. Mom, listen to me carefully, he said. This man, Harmon, he's not who he says he is. Dad never mentioned him, right? That means he's a scammer. These people are clever. They dig up family details and spin these crazy stories to fool seniors. You can't trust him. You need to call the bank right now and give me back access. I'll fly home and take care of it all. I tilted my head, keeping my voice innocent. Fly home? From where? I thought you were here at the house. There was a pause. He had slipped out, had to take an emergency business trip, he stammered. But that's not important. What matters is protecting you. Just restore my access and I'll secure everything. His voice softened again, turning syrupy and patronizing, the tone I'd come to hate. I felt a hard edge in my voice. You know you don't understand money, Mom. That's why Dad put me in charge. Did he? I replied, and stopped pretending to be weak. I told him straight away that Victor Harmon and Diana Reeves were here. Victor and a forensic accountant who'd been tracking every penny he'd taken for 9 years. I heard Andrew suck in a sharp breath through the phone. He tried to blame me, calling me confused, but I dropped the old lady act and spoke clearly. I told him about the Chanel charges and the other purchases that came through just before we froze the accounts. He swung into excuses: his mother's medical bills, college funds, business problems, like that made stealing okay. I named the number, $347,000, taken over 9 years, according to Diana's preliminary work. He went quiet. Diana confirmed she had the records and could prove every transfer. Andrew tried to flip it, calling Victor a scammer and begging me to restore his access so he could fix things, even promising to fly home. I asked where Emily was, my quiet granddaughter, who used to come read with me, and he stammered that she had summer courses and couldn't come. The silence told me everything. They left her behind while using my money for a European vacation. I told Andrew calmly that his power of attorney was revoked. He no longer had access to any accounts, and when he returned, we'd meet with Victor and Diana to talk about paying back what he stole. He protested that we were family. I said being family makes his betrayal worse. After I hung up, my hand was shaking a little, but inside I felt steady. Victor and Diana praised me. Confronting an abuser is hard, they said, and I surprised myself by answering back with confidence. I'm not a victim anymore. My phone buzzed with calls, and then a text from an unknown number. Grandma, it's Emily. Dad's freaking out. Are you okay? Can I see you? For the first time that day, I felt real relief. I told her yes, I was more than okay, and that we had a lot to talk about. Victor then told me the accounts were safe, security would watch my house, and tomorrow I'd meet the directors to officially take charge of the Jenkins collection. Diana checked the records and said Emily was at summer literature classes at Savannah College, only 20 minutes away. I smiled, thinking about the books in Richard's study, running my fingers along their spines. They weren't just money, they were his love, and a new purpose for me, and it felt right to share that with Emily. At exactly 7 o'clock that evening, I heard 3 gentle knocks on my door. I knew right away it was Emily. Unlike her father's sharp pounding or her mother's bossy tapping, Emily always knocked softly, like she was asking permission instead of demanding it. I opened the door and there she was, my sweet granddaughter. Hair pulled into a messy bun, glasses slipping down her nose, and her big canvas bag hanging from one shoulder, no doubt stuffed with books. Grandma, she breathed, her face flooding with relief. You're really okay? Of course I am, I said, pulling her into a hug. She held on tight. Happy birthday, she whispered. I'm sorry I didn't come earlier. I was at the library all day and didn't see Dad's texts until just now. I led her inside and noticed how tired she looked, dark circles under her eyes, shoulders tight with worry. You've been stuck in the middle of all this, haven't you? I asked gently. Emily sighed and placed her bag carefully on the floor. Dad called me 6 times. He sounded frantic, kept saying something about frozen accounts and that you were being taken advantage of. She looked me straight in the eye. But that's not what's happening, is it? No, I said firmly, guiding her toward the sofa, where I had already set out tea. Quite the opposite. We sat together, and I studied her face, so much of her grandfather in her. The same thoughtful eyes, the strong chin, the quiet steadiness. She had inherited Richard's love of books and his sense of justice. They're in Paris, she said suddenly. All of them, Dad, Mom, Jason, Michael, even Grandma Patricia. I know, I said. They told me it was a business trip. They said you knew about it. Her hands twisted in her lap. But they invited me weeks ago. I didn't go because I wanted to spend your birthday with you. I couldn't understand why they'd planned something now. Warmth filled my chest. You didn't want to miss my birthday. Of course not, she said, puzzled that I would even ask. But then Jason posted photos from the Louvre, and I realized they'd been planning this for months. They lied to me, and worse, they abandoned you on your birthday, using your money, apparently. Her voice wavered with hurt. I poured her a cup of tea and chose my words carefully. She was only 21. but she deserved the truth. Your father has been in charge of my finances since Grandpa died. Today I learned he's been taking money for years for his own use. This trip is just the latest. Emily's face crumpled. I was afraid of that. He's been different lately, secretive. Mom keeps buying things and won't explain how. Last month, I overheard them arguing about appearances, about keeping up with people 11, if they had to borrow from your accounts. Borrow? I said dryly. 9 years of borrowing is theft, not a loan. Her eyes widened. Since Grandpa died, they've been stealing from you all this time. I nodded. What your father doesn't know is that Richard expected this. He created a separate estate, much larger than Andrew realized, and arranged for it to be revealed on my 75th birthday. Emily leaned forward. A trap, a test, I corrected gently. And your father failed. I explained how Richard had left the collection, the trust, and how Victor and Diana were helping me protect everything. Your father may face serious consequences. Emily, I wanted you to hear it from me first. She sat in silence, her expression steady, not defensive. Finally, she asked, "What do you need from me, Grandma?" The question caught me off guard, touched me deeply. Not denial, not excuses, just support. Richard would have been proud. Actually, I said, rising, there's something I'd like to show you. I led her to Richard's study, the room she had always loved, where she used to curl up with a book while the rest of the family fussed about. She stepped inside now with fresh eyes. I told her about the rare first editions, the collection's value, and the larger library Richard had built at the Savannah Rare Books Repository. Emily trailed her fingers reverently across the spines, whispering, $10 million in rare books. Her awe reminded me that these weren't just valuable objects. They were Richard's love, his foresight, and perhaps the start of a new chapter for Emily, too. Dad wanted you to sell these at a garage sale, Emily asked, half in disbelief. I gave a little laugh, though there wasn't much humor in it. Your father never really understood the value of things that couldn't be turned into quick cash, I said. Richard knew that. That's why he protected this collection and left me in charge of it. Emily's eyes lit up as if a puzzle piece had clicked into place. And you want me to help with the collection, don't you? Maybe one day, I admitted, smiling at her surprise. If you're interested, of course. You're studying literature and library science after all. Her eyebrows shot up. You knew about my double major. Dad keeps telling me it's pointless, and that I should switch to business or law, something that will actually pay the bills. Your grandfather and I always believed in following your passion. I told her firmly, the Jenkins collection isn't just about money, it needs caretakers who understand the history and meaning behind these books, people who can protect it for future generations. Emily looked around the study with new eyes, as though the shelves of books weren't just dusty objects anymore, but a legacy she was suddenly part of. I'd be honored to learn, she said softly. Then her voice faltered. But what about Dad? What happens when they come back from Europe? I sighed, feeling the weight of that question. That depends on how your father reacts. If he can admit what he's done and show real remorse, maybe there's a chance. But if he comes back angry and unrepentant, I shook my head. Well, I'm prepared for that too. He'll be angry, Emily warned, and Mom will probably be even worse. I know, I said, straightening my shoulders, but I'm done being their convenient ATM. I'm not going to sit quietly while my retirement funds vanished so they can live in luxury. Those days are over. Emily leaned forward and hugged me tight. I'm so sorry, Grandma. I should have seen this sooner. You're the only one who remembered my birthday, I reminded her, hugging her back. You stayed behind when the rest of them lied and ran off to Paris. That means something, Emily. We spent the next hour talking about the rare book collection and the meeting I had coming up with the repository board. I was amazed at how much Emily already knew. She spoke about preservation and cataloging like someone who'd been preparing her whole life for this moment. When it was finally time for her to leave, her phone buzzed nonstop and Drew again, no doubt panicking as his access to my accounts stayed frozen. Emily looked at the screen and sighed. I don't know what to say to him. You don't need to say anything, I reassured her. This is between your father and me. You're not responsible for fixing his mistakes. She nodded, relief softening her face. Then she pulled a package out of her bag. I almost forgot. I brought you something. Inside was a beautiful bound edition of Jane Austen's works, not a rare copy, but thoughtful, personal, and perfect. My throat tightened. It's wonderful. Emily, thank you. After she left, I carried her gift into Richard's study and placed it on his desk. You were right about her, Richard, I whispered to the empty room. She has your integrity. your love of learning. Andrew may have failed us, but Emily, she gives me hope. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Andrew. This is a misunderstanding. Patricia and I are cutting the trip short. We'll be home in 2 days to sort everything out. Please don't do anything rash. I couldn't help but smile at that word rash. What I was doing wasn't rash at all. It was long overdue. I texted Emily to confirm our meeting at the repository tomorrow, then laid out my clothes for the morning. Tomorrow, I would step into my new role as curator of the Jenkins collection. For years, I'd put everyone else first, but Richard had prepared this path for me carefully. Now, it was my turn to guard not just his wealth, but his legacy knowledge, history, and culture. Andrew and Patricia would come home expecting to find a confused old woman they could control, but they would find someone else, entire Lilinoy Jenkins, curator and trustee, standing in her full strength at last. Let them come. I was ready. The next morning, Emily and I arrived at the Savannah Rare Books Repository. The tall Georgian building with its red brick walls looked ordinary from the outside, but I knew the treasures waiting within. As Victor led us through the grand oak doors, my heart pounded not with fear, but with excitement. Richard's secret collection had been waiting for me all along, and now, at last, it was time to step into my rightful place. Mrs. Jenkins, what an honor to finally meet you. The repository's director, Dr. Harriet Simmons, greeted us with a warm smile and a firm handshake. Judge Jenkins spoke of you often during our acquisitions meetings. Acquisitions meetings? I asked, blinking in surprise. Your husband came here regularly, she explained, at least once a month for 15 years. He had an incredible eye for rare legal texts and first editions. The Jenkins collection is one of our crown jewels. Emily and I followed her through secured doors into a climate-controlled room. The air felt cool and crisp, like a library's secret vault. Glass cases displayed shimmering old manuscripts and leather-bound books that looked centuries old. By the door, a brass plaque caught my eye. It read, "The Richard and Eleanor Jenkins Collection of Rare Legal and Literary Works." My breath caught. Richard had included my name all along. "This way, please," Dr. Simmons said, leading us to a tall mahogany door marked Private Collection. "The board is waiting to meet you." Inside, 8 people stood as we entered. Distinguished men and women professors, collectors, curators, rose to greet me with surprising warmth. They shook my hand, offering condolences for Richard's passing as though it had happened yesterday, not 9 years ago. "We've kept everything exactly as the judge requested," explained an older gentleman who introduced himself as the board treasurer. "Waiting for the day you would take your place as chief curator." "My 75th birthday," I whispered, the truth suddenly clear. Richard hadn't just been protecting our money from Andrew, he'd been preparing me for a purpose, a reason to keep living fully after he was gone. "Exactly," Dr. Simmons said with a knowing smile. "The judge was very specific. Full curatorial control would be yours." "But I'm not a rare books expert," I protested. Dr. Simmons chuckled. "The judge said you'd say that." "You're being modest, Mrs. Jenkins. You have a master's degree in library science, and you managed the university's special collections for 15 years. That knowledge doesn't disappear." I felt my cheeks warm. Richard had remembered those years, the part of my life I had quietly put aside to raise children and support his career. "Besides," Dr. Simmons added, "the judge set up a generous fund to provide expert assistance. You won't be alone in this." As the meeting went on, I began to understand the true scale of what Richard had built. This wasn't just a private library, it was a foundation, a living legacy that funded research, supported preservation projects, and even hosted public programs about rare books and legal history. Emily sat at my side, her eyes bright with excitement. When Dr. Simmons mentioned the need for a future succession plan, she glanced meaningfully at my granddaughter. "The judge said, your granddaughter Emily might one day want to carry on this legacy," she noted. "If you're interested, we'd be happy to set up an internship for you." Emily lit up. "It would be an honor," she said, looking to me for approval. I nodded, my heart swelling with pride. While Andrew had been draining my accounts, Richard had been building something meaningful, something lasting for me, for Emily, for all of us. After the meeting, Dr. Simmons gave us a private tour of the highlights. We walked past cases filled with treasures, first editions of famous legal writings, signed opinions from legendary judges, even novels that had shaped how people thought about justice. Finally, she stopped at a glass case in the center of the room. "And this," she said softly, "is the centerpiece of the collection." Inside was a small, leather-bound book that didn't look extraordinary at first glance. Then I read the label, First printing of Common Sense by Thomas Paine. 1776. Inscribed by John Adams to Alexander Hamilton. My breath caught. This is, words failed me, worth about $2 million, Dr. Simmons confirmed. Judge Jenkins acquired it 7 years ago, outbidding several major museums, but he had already passed away by then, I whispered. Dr. Simmons nodded. Yes, the judge had given us authority to continue acquiring certain works even after his death. He wanted the collection to keep growing, to last for generations. Emily stepped closer to the glass, her eyes wide with wonder. Grandpa bought this knowing he'd never see it here, she murmured. The judge had remarkable foresight, Dr. Simmons said gently, and deep faith in those he left behind. She gave me a knowing smile. He said his Eleanor would understand the value of patience, the kind of patience that sees beyond one lifetime. Her words stayed with me as we finished the tour. Outside the conference room, Victor joined us again. He'd been working with the repository's legal team all morning. Everything is finalized. Mrs. Jenkins, he reported, the board has formally recognized you as the chief curator. You now have full authority over acquisitions, programs, staffing, internships included. I glanced at Emily, and Victor nodded. Yes, especially internships. The operational budget includes specific funding for education and succession planning. He handed me a folder, and when I opened it, the number on the first page nearly made me gasp. This is just for operations, I asked. Victor smiled knowingly. The judge believed cultural preservation deserved real support. That's only the operations budget. The acquisitions budget is separate and considerably larger. As we prepared to leave, Dr. Simmons handed me a small, velvet-lined box. The judge left this for you, she said softly. Inside was an antique brass key, clearly symbolic. Attached to it was a folded note in Richard's familiar handwriting, for Eleanor, who always held the key to everything that mattered. The collection is yours now, as it always has been in spirit. Use it wisely, my love. Tears welled up as I held that final gift. All these years, I thought I'd just been surviving without him. But Richard had been planning for me to thrive. Outside the repository, Emily threw her arms around me. Grandma, this is incredible. The collection, the internship. It's like Grandpa built the perfect future for both of us. He always did think ahead, I said, smiling through tears. Just then, my phone buzzed again. Another message from Andrew, more desperate than the last. Our flight lands tomorrow at 2 p.m. We need to meet immediately to fix this disaster. I've spoken with our family attorney. Their family attorney, I thought bitterly. Never mind that again, Emily asked, noticing my face. Yes, I said quietly. They're coming home tomorrow. They expect to find me confused, apologetic, ready to hand back access to my accounts. Emily gave a small, fierce smile that reminded me so much of Richard, but instead they'll find the chief curator of the Jenkins collection. Exactly, I said, slipping the brass key into my purse. It's time we prepare for their return. I turned to Victor. Please arrange a meeting at my home tomorrow evening with Diana present to review the financial records. Of course, Mrs. Jenkins. Would you like legal counsel there as well? Thought about it carefully. Yes, but someone measured and reasonable. This isn't about vengeance. It's about setting boundaries and consequences. Andrew is still my son, and his children, especially Emily, are precious to me. If there's a way forward without criminal charges, I want to try. Emily hesitated when I asked if she would join us tomorrow. You mean, be there when Dad and Mom find out everything? Only if you're comfortable, I assured her. This isn't your fight. Emily squared her shoulders. So much like her grandfather, it made my heart ache. I'll be there, Grandma. You shouldn't face them alone. On the drive home, I thought about how much had changed in just one day. Yesterday, I was a lonely widow eating a quiet birthday lunch while my family vacationed with stolen money. Today, I was the chief curator of a priceless collection, with financial independence and a clear purpose for the years ahead. Richard had known the truth about our son long before I had. He'd seen the strength in me that I had forgotten, and now, because of his faith, I was ready for what tomorrow would bring. Andrew and Patricia wouldn't give up their entitlement easily. There would be anger, accusations, maybe worse. But for the first time in years, I felt unshakable. I was no longer a source of easy money. I was Eleanor Jenkins, woman of purpose, guardian of a legacy. Let them come home. They would find their accounts frozen, their assumptions shattered. I was finally ready. I wanted everything in the living room to send a message. Richard's old leather chair was waiting for me, set at the head of the room so no one could miss who was in charge. On the coffee table, I laid out neat piles of paperwork Diana had prepared, color-coded, easy to follow, proof of everything they'd taken. On the side table, I placed the brass key from the repository, my curator badge, and the folder that showed the true value of the Jenkins collection. Victor arrived first, bringing along Catherine Ellington, a calm, confident attorney who specialized in protecting people my age. Diana came right after with her laptop and more records. Emily slipped in quietly and sat close beside me. Her face was pale, but her eyes were steady. "Are you sure about this, Grandma?" she whispered. "The lawyers could handle it." I squeezed her hand. "Some truths need to be said face to face. Some things they need to hear from me." At exactly 6:30, the doorbell rang. Through the window, I saw Andrew pacing, Patricia stiff and angry at his side. When Victor opened the door, Andrew stormed in before anyone could speak. "Mother, what the hell is going on? Do you have any idea what you've—" He froze, mid-sentence when he saw the group waiting. His eyes narrowed. "Who are these people? Emily, what are you doing here?" "Hello, Andrew." "Patricia," I said evenly. "Please, sit down. We have much to discuss." Patricia didn't sit. Her fancy clothes were wrinkled from travel, and her face was tight with fury. "We don't need a meeting. We need you to fix whatever you did to our accounts. Your accounts," Diana said calmly, as she flipped open her laptop. "Let's clear something up before we go further." Andrew shot her a glare. "And who exactly are you?" "Diana Reeves, forensic accountant," she answered without flinching. "I've been reviewing the financial abuse your mother has suffered for the past 9 years. Sit down now, I've prepared a presentation." The color drained from Andrew's face. "Mother, this is ridiculous. Whatever these people told you, they haven't told me anything I didn't confirm myself," I cut in sharply. "The paperwork tells the story. 9 years of stolen money, hidden transfers, and lies." Patricia crossed her arms and hissed. "Fraud is a strong word. We've only been managing your money to protect you." "Protect me." I gestured to Diana, who spun her laptop around. A chart filled the screen, showing withdrawals lined up against their luxury purchases. "Was the $43,000 you spent on jewelry last year to protect me? Or the $27,000 golf club membership? Or the $93,000 trip to Europe?" Andrew's face flushed red. "We've been under pressure, business losses. The kids' schooling stopped," Victor said firmly. "The children's education funds were secured years ago. Judge Jenkins made sure of that. You know it." Patricia glared at him. "And who are you supposed to be?" "Victor Harmon," he replied, calm as ever. "I've managed the Jenkins Trust for 15 years, at Judge Jenkins's request." Andrew's bravado cracked, confusion showing through. "What Jenkins Trust? Dad's estate was settled ages ago." "Only the part you were meant to see," I said, leaning forward. "Your father knew exactly what was happening, Andrew. He saw the kind of choices you were making while he was still alive." "That's not true," Andrew snapped, though doubt flickered in his voice. Catherine finally spoke, her tone firm but professional. "Judge Jenkins set aside the bulk of his fortune in a separate trust, managed by Mr. Harmon, until Mrs. Jenkins turned 7. These documents confirm his concerns about possible financial exploitation." She slid papers across the table. Andrew stared at them, refusing to touch them. "This can't be legal." "It's completely legal," Catherine replied, "and the evidence Ms. Reeves gathered on your spending could lead to charges: financial elder abuse, fraud, theft." Patricia gasped. "Criminal charges, over family money." "Eleanor, you can't mean this." "I mean every word," I said, holding her gaze. "You've stolen more than $340,000 from me. You used my retirement for your luxuries and left me eating a sandwich alone on my birthday while you sipped champagne in Paris." Emily's voice shook, but she spoke up beside me. "I saw the pictures, Dad. You were all there, Mom, Jason, Michael, even Grandma Patricia. Don't pretend otherwise." Everyone except me had gone along with it, because I refused to lie about where Andrew was going. He turned to his daughter, his face tight with desperation. "Emily, you don't understand. This is a family matter, and people are making it into something bigger than it really is." "I understand perfectly," Emily shot back. "I understand that you've been taking Grandma's money for years, that you ignored her on her birthday, and that you've lied to everyone, including me." Patricia's calm mask slipped for the first time. "We didn't steal anything," she insisted. "We were just managing Eleanor's money for her own good. She doesn't know how to handle finances. Richard always took care of that." I asked, pulling out Richard's letter and reading aloud. "Remember that steel in your spine that first drew me to you, Ellie? the quiet intelligence that others mistook for weakness. I looked up. Your father never thought of me as helpless, Andrew. That story was something you invented to excuse your behavior. Andrew raked a hand through his hair. The same frustrated habit he'd had since childhood. This is insane. Dad would never go behind my back to set up some secret trust, and yet he did, Victor confirmed. The judge made sure everything was airtight. Richard spelled out his concerns, set up the trust, and left instructions for the truth to be revealed at the exact moment you showed your real character. The moment we all just witnessed, I added quietly. Andrew's shock faded, and I saw the calculation in his eyes. So there's more money. Good. That's actually great news for everyone. We can sort out this little misunderstanding and move forward as a family. I was stunned at his audacity. Did he really think he still had a right to the money after everything? Diana cleared her throat. This might be a good time to discuss the restitution plan. Restitution? Patricia repeated, her voice sharp. For the money you misused, Diana explained calmly. We've drafted several options: structured repayments, asset liquidation. These civil solutions are being offered instead of criminal charges. But that decision rests with Mrs. Jenkins. Finally, the seriousness of the situation began to register with Andrew and Patricia. This wasn't just a messy family argument. This was about consequences. You can't be serious, Andrew said hollowly. We're your family. Yes, you are, I replied, which makes your betrayal even more painful. I straightened in Richard's old chair, feeling his strength beside me. Here's what will happen. You'll sign the restitution agreement Catherine has prepared. You'll agree to pay back every dollar. You'll give up any access to my finances. And you'll admit in writing what you've done. And if we don't, Patricia challenged, though her voice wavered, then I'll file criminal charges, I said simply. The evidence is overwhelming. Financial elder abuse is a serious crime in Georgia, with possible prison time. The silence in the room was heavy. Mom, Andrew finally said, his voice cracking for the first time. We're still your family. Surely there's a better way than legal papers and threats. I agree, I said, surprising him. A better way would have been honesty, respect, and real care for me. That choice was always there. But for 9 years, you chose lies and greed. Emily spoke up, her voice firm. Grandma is giving you a chance to stay out of prison, Dad. That's more generous than most people would ever be in her position. Andrew looked at her like she had stabbed him. You're taking her side. I'm taking the side of truth and basic decency, Emily replied steadily. Catherine slid the restitution agreement across the table. You have 24 hours to review and sign this. After that, Mrs. Jenkins will move forward with criminal charges. Andrew stared at the paper, unmoving. And if we sign, what then? Then, I said, softening my voice, we'll try to rebuild something, if it's possible, with boundaries, with trust. I don't want to lose my family, Andrew, but I won't let my family exploit me either. Patricia jumped up, her voice sharp again. This is extortion. We'll speak to our own lawyers before signing anything. Of course, Catherine said smoothly, but keep in mind, the complaint is already drafted and ready to be filed. The 24-hour deadline is firm. As Andrew and Patricia headed for the door, I called out, one more thing. They froze and turned back reluctantly. I've been appointed chief curator of the Jenkins collection at the Savannah Rare Books Repository. It's a big responsibility and will keep me busy. Emily has accepted an internship there as well. The blank look on their faces would have been almost funny if the whole situation weren't so tragic. The Jenkins collection, I repeated, worth about $10 million. Another piece of your father's legacy you didn't even know about. Andrew's face fell. 10 million in books while we've been scraping by with bills. I raised an eyebrow. Yes, struggling. Though somehow, that struggle still allowed first-class flights and 5-star hotels when they finally left. The room went quiet. Emily slipped her hand into mine and gave it a gentle squeeze. You were incredible, Grandma. Victor nodded. Judge Jenkins would be proud. You stayed calm the whole time. I let out a shaky breath as the tension left me. Do you think they'll sign? They'd be foolish not to, Diana said matter-of-factly. If they refuse, they'll face public shame and, maybe even criminal charges. I thought about the cold, calculating look on Andrew's face after the shock wore off. He'll sign. He always does what's best for himself. As the lawyers packed up, I found myself drawn back into Richard's study. The room didn't feel like a memorial anymore. It felt alive like a bridge he had built, guiding me forward. You planned this, didn't you? I whispered to his portrait. You saw the lies, the the betrayal, and even that I'd need something bigger than family drama to carry me forward. Emily appeared in the doorway. "Grandma, are you okay?" I smiled at her, my unexpected ally, my glimpse of hope for the future. "I'm better than okay, sweetheart. For the first time in years, I feel alive." "What happens tomorrow, after they sign?" she asked. "We start fresh," I said, this time, with truth at the center. "It won't be easy, but the best things in life never are." Emily nodded. "Grandpa used to say that anything worth having is worth fighting for." He was right about so much, I agreed. Running my fingers over the brass key Richard had left me a small but powerful reminder of his trust. "Now, shall we look at those catalog records for your internship? The Jenkins collection won't organize itself." 1 year later, I stood in the grand hall of the Savannah Rare Books Repository, taking in the glow of chandeliers reflecting off polished floors. The air buzzed with excitement as academics, collectors, and Savannah's cultural elite mingled over champagne. At the center of it all stood the Jenkins collection, expanded with treasures I had personally chosen. "Grandma, the mayor just arrived," Emily said, appearing at my side in a stunning midnight blue gown, her curator's badge shining proudly. "And Dr. Simmons wants to know if you're ready for the dedication ceremony." "Tell her I'll be right there," I replied, smoothing the emerald silk of my own gown. A year ago, I would have never dreamed of spending this much on a dress knot, while every penny was being siphoned away by my son. So much had changed since my 75th birthday. "Mrs. Jenkins, you've outdone yourself," Victor said warmly as he approached in his tuxedo. "The board couldn't be happier with the collection's growth under your care." Richard laid the foundation. I answered modestly. "I'm just continuing his vision." "You've done more than that," Victor insisted. "The fellowships, the education programs, the preservation work, that's all you." The judge would be so proud. Across the room, I spotted Andrew and Patricia. They looked stiff in their formal clothes, their smiles tight. Exactly 1 year ago, they had signed the restitution papers, Boyd in prison, but agreeing to repay every cent they took. It hadn't been easy for them. Andrew's law firm had struggled under the cloud of scandal, and Patricia had been forced to scale back her lavish lifestyle. Vacations and luxury parties had given way to something simpler, something real. "Ready to face them?" Victor asked gently. "As ready as I'll ever be," I said. Family dinners had been awkward, our conversations careful, our steps toward reconciliation slow. Andrew had never missed a payment, though Patricia's resentment was written on her face each time. I crossed the room, nodding to guests who congratulated me along the way, until I finally reached them. Both looked tired, but they tried to smile. "Mother," Andrew said stiffly, "congratulations on the gala. It's impressive." "Thank you for coming," I told him honestly. "It means a lot to have family here tonight." Patricia's eyes flicked around the glittering hall. The wealthy patrons, the priceless books glowing in their glass cases. "The collection seems to be thriving," Patricia said, her voice smooth but edged with bitterness. "It is," I answered calmly. "The new pieces have already drawn a lot of interest from scholars." Andrew shifted in place, clearly uneasy. His eyes moved toward Emily, who was confidently explaining a rare manuscript to a group of fascinated donors. "She seems to be settling into her role here," he admitted. "She has a gift for it," I said proudly. "The board is already talking about offering her a permanent position after she graduates." Andrew let out a reluctant sigh. A more practical career than I gave her credit for. It wasn't much, but it was something. Just a year ago, he would have rolled his eyes and called the entire repository a waste of time and money. This small acknowledgement was progress, however grudging. Before the silence stretched too long, Dr. Simmons appeared at my side. "Mrs. Jenkins, we're ready for the dedication whenever you are." "Of course," I said, glad for the escape. "If you'll excuse me," I nodded to Andrew and Patricia. "Duty calls." As I moved toward the podium, I spotted my other grandchildren in the crowd. Jason and Michael had come at Emily's insistence. They looked bored, but at least they were there. Even more surprising, their social media feeds no longer mocked their old grandma. Whether it was out of respect or just to avoid looking bad, I didn't know, but I chose to see it as a step forward. The crowd fell quiet as I took my place on the stage. The brass key Richard had given me hung from a chain around my neck, both jewelry and symbol. "Distinguished guests, colleagues, and friends," I began, my voice steady. 1 year ago today, the Jenkins collection began a new chapter when I took on the role of chief curator. Tonight, we celebrate not just our expanded collection, but the larger mission, Judge Richard Jenkins dreamed of when he founded this institution 15 years ago. As I spoke about preserving knowledge, educating future generations, and protecting cultural treasures, I noticed genuine interest in the crowd's faces. They respected me for my work, for my vision, not the way Andrew used to, with that condescending smile for his confused mother. In honor of this anniversary, I continued, I am proud to announce the creation of the Jenkins Fellowship for Literary Preservation. This yearly grant will support young scholars working in rare book conservation and digital preservation, keeping these treasures alive for generations to come. Applause broke out across the hall. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Andrew's polite expression change to real surprise. He hadn't expected this. He hadn't expected me to build something new. The initial funding for this fellowship, I added, meeting Andrew's eyes directly, comes from money recovered over the past year. What was once taken through betrayal has now been transformed into opportunity, from personal loss into public good, from exploitation into legacy. The room went silent, most unaware of the weight behind my words. But Andrew knew, Patricia knew, from the look on their faces. I could tell they finally understood what they had almost destroyed, not just money, but meaning, dignity, and purpose. Later, as guests mingled, Emily found me in a quiet corner. She squeezed my hand. That was perfect, Grandma, especially the part about transformation. It felt right, I admitted, even if only our family understood the true meaning behind it. Dad looked like he'd been hit by a truck, Emily said with a hint of satisfaction. I think it finally sank in, that what he took from you wasn't just money, it was your pride, your sense of purpose. And both have been restored now, I replied softly, with interest. As the night wound down, Andrew approached me alone. Patricia had slipped away to chat with her friends. Mother, he hesitated, struggling for words. The fellowship, it's an impressive idea. Using the restitution money that Wade's, not what I expected. I tilted my head, genuinely curious. And what did you expect, Andrew? He shifted uncomfortably. I don't know. That you'd spend it on yourself. Travel, luxury, the things we spent it on. I gave him a gentle smile. That was never who I was, Andrew. Something you might have remembered if you'd seen me as a person, not just a resource. His face turned red with shame, something I hadn't seen from him since he was a boy. I'm beginning to understand that, he said. It wasn't quite an apology, but it was something. A small step. Enough for now. Your final restitution payment is due next month, I reminded him. After that, our financial ties will be over. And then, his voice carried a note of uncertainty. Do we continue rebuilding, as mother and son, as family? I lifted my chin, keeping my boundaries clear, only with mutual respect. Andrew, if you're willing. He nodded slowly, and for the first time in years, I saw a glimpse of the boy I once knew, shining through the hardened man. I'd like that. When the guests had gone, and the staff began carefully returning priceless books to their cases, I found myself alone in the vast gallery. The space felt almost holy, not just because of the treasures it held, but because of what it meant. Richard's wisdom, my own renewal, Emily's bright future. I touched the brass key around my neck. It had unlocked more than just the Jenkins collection. It had unlocked me, the strength Richard had always believed in, even when I'd forgotten it was there. You were right, Richard, I whispered to the empty room, about everything. From sitting alone on my 75th birthday above my retirement money stolen to now, standing here as the head of a world-class institution, the journey had been painful, unexpected, and utterly transformative. Richard had seen it all coming. His careful planning turned betrayal into protection, and protection into purpose. As I gathered my things, Emily appeared in the doorway. Ready, Grandma? The car's waiting. Yes, I said with a smile, taking one last, lingering look at the collection. My collection, now, in every sense of the word. I'm ready. The warm Savannah night wrapped around us as we stepped outside. Stars glittered across the sky, bright and full of promise. As our car pulled away, I felt Richard's presence beside me, not as a ghost of the past, but as a partner in the life we had built. Even after his death, they had underestimated me, they had dismissed me, they had tried to use me, but in doing so, they had set me free. At 76, I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving, living with purpose, dignity, and a quiet strength that had always been there, waiting to rise. Epilogue. 5 years have passed since that painful 75th birthday. The Jenkins collection has grown into one of the most respected rare book repositories in the Southeast. Emily, now the associate curator, is preparing to one day take my place. At 81, I have no plans of slowing down just yet. Andrew and I have found a fragile peace built on his acceptance of boundaries and my choice to forgive, though never forget. Patricia stays polite but cold. I suspect she still resents the life changes the restitution forced on her. My grandsons visit now, curiosity replacing the scorn they once showed. The Jenkins Fellowship has already supported 12 bright young scholars, their research pushing the field of literary preservation into the digital age. Each time I read their updates, I think of Richard, how proud he would be to see this legacy stretching far beyond our family. Just last month, I received a letter from the National Book Foundation. I've been nominated for a Lifetime Achievement Award in Preservation and Education. The ceremony will take place on my 82nd birthday. Perfect symmetry, bring in my journey full circle. When I step up to that podium, Richard's key will hang around my neck, and I'll carry with me the lessons of these extraordinary years, that age is not the end, but a transformation, that betrayal, as painful as it is, can open doors to new purpose, and that it's never too late to reclaim your power, your dignity, and your right to write your own story. They left me alone on my 75th birthday, never imagining that their betrayal would spark the most meaningful chapter of my life, chapter I wrote for myself. That's today's story. If it touched you, leave a like and subscribe. And don't forget, share your own life lesson in the comments below.